think what Advocate Cilliers is trying to do is trying to find out which portion of this statement that you said relied on supports the allegation that are made in 5.9 of your statement. Which portion of that statement? And again, no answer to your very direct and clear question, to the extent that on page 8477, line 10, you said the following: so if I must understand your evidence, you are not relying on this document because this article does not say so. You're referring now to the Guardian report. He again attempted to evade what you've put to him, and to the extent that you then a couple of lines further from line 17 said, Mr. Crawford Brown, does this document support the allegation that you are making, for which you cannot produce now? Before we adjourned, I understood you to say that you are relying on this document. You never made any mention of an email. And you then concluded, Advocate Cilliers, I think, let us get to the next question. Clearly, Mr. Crawford Brown cannot answer this question. Well, I clearly understood it before we went for lunch, but now he's relying on this document, and now all of a sudden he's adding other emails which he cannot find now. This is just to illustrate to you how dangerous it is to follow this vague, principleless method that has been suggested. If you disregard rules of evidence, this is what you will get. And what are people submitting to you or suggesting that you should disregard rules of evidence in compiling your report and making your findings and or your recommendations? What do they expect from you now when you deal with evidence of Mr. Crawford Brown in this regard? Must you now include in making your findings on these allegations that he made, some of them under oath, on which he went to the Constitutional Court in applications, which he repeated on several occasions, but now it has been clearly illustrated that he either made a mistake or he was plain dishonest. But the fact is, let's not get into that issue. The fact is, how can you deal with that, or how should you deal with that? My respectful submission is the way to deal with that is the way that an ordinary court of law will deal with that. You have now allowed him to make his submissions. You have allowed him to put forward to you the sources on which he allegedly relied, but now you also have further information at your disposal, and clearly what is expected from you is to make a proper finding now based on the rules of evidence after considering everything, and then come to a conclusion, make a finding and make a recommendation based on that. And that is your duty, and I would respectfully submit that's the least that the public will expect from you. That's the reason why the State President decided to appoint senior judges to lead this commission, because they are trained people to have regard to all material put before them, even hearsay and theories and hypotheses, etc., but in the end, to be able, because they are trained to do so, to come up with the findings and the recommendations that's based on sustainable facts and sustainable law. And very important in this regard is, if you make a recommendation not based on the method that I suggest that you should follow, it will lead to really a disaster. If you just make findings and recommendations and ignore the principles of evidence, what will we land up with? Now you will maybe make a finding based on speculation and hypothesis and theories from one of the so-called critics, and then there will be a prosecution. And once the people land in court, there's no sustainable evidence to substantiate your finding. So you will have the result that a prosecutor will land in court in a criminal trial, or a civil trial for that matter, without sustainable evidence to substantiate the allegations contained in a charge sheet. The reason is very easy to find, because the findings were then based on hearsay, speculation, slanderous gossip, not sustainable in law. That will be the result if you, with respect, do not follow a proper approach of evaluating the material before you in a matter prescribed by our century-old rules of evidence. A further example, and I will not deal with that in the detailed manner that I've just dealt with the previous one, but it's even worse, I would submit, and I'm referring you to page 8113 of the transcript of the record during the cross-examination of Dr. Woods. You would recall, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Musi, that he made a serious allegation in paragraph 20 of his written submissions, where he stated that Mr. Shlongwane, Advocate Shlongwane, my client, received secret payments of 200 million rand, and he equated that to bribery, clear indications of bribery, and he relied in main on a newspaper article that appeared in the Sunday Times. It is indeed an article that was annexed to his submissions as GGW12A. This article, Mr. Chair, was stating the following. You'll find that on page 8114 of the record. It stated, that's now the Sunday Times article, Swedish defence group SAB yesterday admitted that millions were paid to clench the South African contract for fighter jets, but said the erstwhile British partner BAE Systems had paid the bribes. It was then established in cross-examination over the next couple of pages that the source of this newspaper article was in fact a press release by SAB the day before. And again, fortunately for the assistance of internet, we during cross-examination could in fact trace and obtain a copy of the SAB press statement that the author of this newspaper article relied. And of course, it appeared that there was not a suggestion of this admission by SAB that the newspaper article alleged. It was absolutely, I described it, and you can again look at it in the following manner on page 8117. What I'm further informing you is that this article is outrageously scandalous, because there's no basis for the very first paragraph suggesting or alleging that SAB, in fact, accused the British partner BAE Systems of receiving or paying bribes. Now, again, this illustrates the point that I've raised earlier, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Musi, why you should be very careful in your evaluating process and in making your findings and recommendations. You have been appointed, as already stated, as two senior judges to preside over this inquiry, and you should evaluate the evidence on a proper basis in order that your findings is justified and based on sound, sustainable evidence. And to suggest at this stage that you should follow a vague process in evaluation and making findings where you allow all sorts of unfounded hearsay allegations and or documentation that we don't know what the author, who the author was, or whether the source documents had been correctly quoted and or interpreted, you should not allow that, Mr. Chairman. So I would respectfully submit that it is of cardinal importance that you, in evaluating the evidence and the material put before you, should be very, very strict, and you should consider and approach it on the same basis as a High Court judge would evaluate evidence. The reason for that is not hard to find, Mr. Chair. If you have indeed a huge responsibility in bringing out your report. You can, with great respect, destroy lives and reputations in your report. And you should, with great respect, refrain from doing so unless you are certain in your minds that whatever findings you are making and or whatever recommendations you are making is indeed justified and based on sustainable evidence. So in that regard, Mr. Chair, I also distance myself with great respect of the allegation or the submissions to the extent that you should follow this loose approach as has been suggested by some of the persons making submissions to you. That concludes the two basic principles, or I can maybe just refer to one further issue in this regard, which also illustrates it quite well. That is the issue of the Murphy statements. In all these submissions made and all the newspaper allegations and even in some of the court applications, statements and or allegations of which the SFO investigator, Mr. Murphy, was allegedly the author, played quite a central role. You'll recall that during the evidence of Mr. Shlengwane, he pointed out to you that there was something very strange relating to the statements of Mr. Murphy. The fact that there were two statements on the face of it commissioned on the very same day by different commissioners of oath and differing in material terms. There was, in fact, a document, Murphy affidavit document comparison handed to you during Mr. Shlongwane's evidence, and I'm not going to read from it, but you can go to that document for a comparison. And despite the challenge that Mr. Shlongwane made during his evidence in this regard, pointing out these inconsistencies and these on the face of it, a very suspicious situation. The police officer, Colonel de Plooy, did testify, and he was the person dealing with Mr. Murphy. And not a word of explanation of what is the explanation for this, on the face of it, very suspicious situation. I don't want to take it further, just again to say to you that is a further illustration why you should be very careful to have regard to hearsay evidence. I'm not saying you're totally excluded from that. All I'm saying to you is, with respect, you should approach it very carefully as a court of law would approach it before you make findings based on unsubstantiated hearsay. Of course, if the hearsay is substantiated and corroborated by objective facts and or other reliable evidence, then clearly you are entitled to have regard to that. But you should, with great respect, approach it very carefully, as we would find in courts of law. I would then briefly refer you to our closing submissions that we made in writing and filed with the Commission, and I'm not intending to read through it. You have it before you, and I'm sure you have either read it and or you intend to read it. But I've attempted to assist you by giving you a sort of a approach that you can follow in evaluating the question of paragraph 1.5 of the terms of reference, with reference to Mr. Shlongwane. And I would submit, well, it's only paragraph 1.5 that may be applicable in Mr. Shlongwane's case, and that is the question whether any person within and or outside the government of South Africa improperly influenced the award or conclusion of any of the contracts awarded and concluded in the SDPP procurement process, and if so, then further questions. I started off with referring you to the evidence of Mr. Shlongwane himself. His evidence was, with great respect, very emphatic. You'll find it on page 5 of the written submissions that we filed with you. The important part is he unequivocally stated and categorically stated that he did not pay any gratification to anybody who was involved in the procurement process in order to influence such person relating to the award or conclusion of any of the contracts awarded and concluded in the SDPP. You will find that on the transcript, page 8961, line 1. Line 18 to 22. He further emphatically stated that he had no knowledge of any other person paying such gratification to influence the SDPP. Now, very important in this regard is, of course, the fact that he was not cross-examined. All those critics who over many years slandered him and made very serious allegations of the worst kind knew that he was going to testify. They had the opportunity to cross-examine him, and they all decided and chose not to do so. We respectfully submit that is of significance, and you can't disregard that in your report. I fully agree with the submissions made by Mr. Burani this morning in this regard. It will, with great respect, be greatly unfair to make findings against a witness who came to the witness box, who put his case. The fact that he was to testify was widely published and well known in all the relevant circles. Everybody chose not to cross-examine him, and I would submit to make findings contrary to what he testified, without him having had the opportunity of being informed of any disputes and or being confronted with any disputes and or inferences and or theories by the so-called critics and or anybody who did not agree with his evidence would be an unfair situation. Then we had the evidence relating to Mr. Shlongwane of all the decision makers. Mr. Chair, in this regard, and that maybe also is relevant to the submissions that I first made relating to another body to inquire into this matter. You really had the opportunity to listen to all the participants and all the people involved in this process. From the then State President, Mr. Mbeki, various members of Cabinet, down to the officials from the Department of Defense, the Department of Trade and Industry, everybody involved in the process did testify before you, which I think a further body will have very serious difficulties to again be able to arrange. But the fact is, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Musi, is all these people unequivocally testified that there was no suggestion of any improper influence in this regard, not by Mr. Shlongwane, but by nobody in particular. But I'm
sorry, Colonel Deploy, when he testified, he said that, Colonel Deploy, when he testified, he said that, there's no evidence of direct corrupt payment. But then he went further and used words like, there are red flags, there are suspicions. What should we make about it? Well, I'm not quite sure, in law, what he means when he says that there are red flags. Because I thought we were working on the basis of evidence.
Mr. Chair, I've dealt with, and I can refer you to page 20 of the written submissions, and let me go there and deal with it. Two members of the Hawks testified. You'll recall Major General Meyering and Colonel de Plooy. Now, on page 21 of the written submissions, I referred you to the evidence of Major General Meyering, and I'll quote it for you because it's of assistance relating to your questions. It appears on the record, the transcript, page 10,730, lines 13 to 21. And what he stated was the following. So clearly he never suggested to you, that's now referring to Colonel de Plooy, that there was evidence of corrupt payments relating to Advocate Shlungwane. If that were so, you would have told the Commission about it. General Meyering, I can state that there was no direct evidence to corrupt payment, but specific names I cannot deal with, Honourable Chair. Advocate Sillier, it is a matter of inference. He told you that no evidence of corrupt payments could be identified by anybody. That's what he said. General Meyering, that is correct, Honourable Chair. If you turn the page to 23, paragraph 36, or paragraph 35, let me maybe start at paragraph 34 of the written submissions, where we stated the following. The high water mark of evidence of Colonel de Plooy can be summarized on the basis that he admitted that there was no direct evidence of any corrupt payments, but that he only stated that there are red flags and suspicions. That you'll find on page 10788, line 14 to 23 of the record. Paragraph 35, we submitted, when he was in fact tested on the alleged red flags, he could not assist by providing any specific reference to facts that could give rise to these red flags. So he said there were red flags, but he couldn't assist by saying what then created these red flags, whatever that means, Mr. Chair. But we then quoted paragraph 36 of our written submissions, the following, and that was in questioning by Advocate Lebala. Do you have evidence that demonstrates that Mr. Shlungwane has improperly influenced, let us start at the top or let us start below, members of the evaluation committee? Colonel de Plooy, again, Honourable Chair, I do not have any evidence at any level that he would have influenced any person. That you'll find on page 8994 of the transcript. There's some discrepancy in the record that it at one stage moved back in numbers that I have to warn you about. And then further in paragraph 37 we refer to page 8994, line 23 and further. The following again, Advocate Lebala. No, we will come to the red flags, but I would like you to be specific, yes or no. Is there evidence, direct or indirect, that he influenced members of the evaluation committees at the lower level? Colonel de Plooy, there is no direct evidence. Now, Mr. Chair, that is again taking us back, and that's why I spent some time up front with making submissions regarding the approach that you should follow. Any finding, and let's be practical, any finding by yourselves that there's indications of Mr. Shlungwane having had received bribes and or influencing the process unlawfully in a corrupt manner will destroy not only the reputation of Mr. Shlungwane, it will destroy his financial ability to earn a living. It's all fundamental rights being entrenched in our Constitution. And will it, with great respect, be fair of any commission appointed to investigate and make factual findings on a speculative basis where the person involved in an investigation of 10 years tells you in no uncertain terms that there are no evidence to destroy the reputation and financial ability of an individual? clearly that would be, with great respect, greatly irresponsible. And nobody with great respect can ever require that from you, apart maybe from some of the critics who were more than willing to make these wild allegations based on sources that we have already illustrated to you of what dubious nature and just plain wrong source documents that they relied on. So with great respect, we submit that there is no basis for any finding of any untoward conduct, corrupt conduct, and or whatever unlawful conduct against Mr. Shlongwane to be made. The contrary is true, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Musi. There is absolutely no fact that illustrates any unlawful conduct by Mr. Shlongwane and or anybody else for that matter. But we submit that the only finding that you can make is that despite various serious allegations made prior to the commission and or during the commission by certain of the critics, after a careful consideration and evaluation of the material before you, there is not a single fact to illustrate and or to indicate untoward and or unlawful conduct on the side of Mr. Shlongwane. That concludes our submissions. If there's any specific issues that you wish to raise, we will be glad to attend to any.
Thank you, Advocate Sidley, for your submissions. I hope they'll help us to prepare our report. I'm not sure if my fellow commissioners got any question. You have any question? No. He says no. Thanks a lot for your participation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I think we're left with two groups now, SAB and BAE. Have you made arrangements on who starts first?
Chair, we have. We're grateful to BAE for letting the SAB representatives make their submissions first. BAE will follow those. Chair, we have submitted to the Commission's representative a written closing submission, and we do hope that you Chair, and Commissioner Musi have got copies of that written submission. Again, it is not our intention to read that line by line to you, but simply perhaps to highlight a couple of important themes for the respectful consideration, both of the Chair and also Commissioner Musi. Chair, as has been remarked, I'm sure many times by various representatives before this Commission, it has now been 3.5 years that this Commission has been vested with an important process in considering the allegations of fraud, corruption, impropriety and the like in respect of the SDPP. We have highlighted in paragraph 2 of our written submissions comments made by the then Minister of Justice when he announced the details of this commission on the 27th of October 2011. I'm sure that these are well known to you, but it does highlight one aspect of our submissions that has been referred to both by the Chair and also in submissions made by the other parties this morning. If we could briefly refer to a couple of aspects of that explanation. This commission has been instituted as a consequence of allegations that have persistently been in the public domain for a long time. The allegations surfaced soon after the dawn of democracy, following the procurement of multi-billion rand armoury that was intended to address the needs identified by the South African National Defence Force during 1996 to 1998. This culminated in the Cabinet decision to purchase aircraft, corvettes and submarines at the cost of 29 billion rand over 12 years. And then this is the part that we would, with respect, like to emphasize. The allegations were probed by the different state institutions and were also a matter of public debate in Parliament. Every time an end appeared in sight, new allegations would emerge. It is our conviction that the inquiry will enable us collectively as a nation to reach closure on this otherwise contentious matter. We are hopeful that we will emerge from the Commission as a stronger nation, glued together by values of social cohesion and nation building in a common endeavour to build a united and prosperous South Africa. Chair, Commissioner Musi, with respect, SARB agrees wholeheartedly with the important imperative that underlies this Commission, and also shares the hope and belief that was expressed at the outset of this Commission process by the then Minister of Justice. Every time an end appeared in sight, new allegations would emerge. That has been a theme that has dogged the SDPP for many years, including the role of SARB in that process. The Commission has now had an opportunity to hear the most extensive evidence and to reach conclusions. With respect, we would submit, along with our learned friends, that the time has now come for this Commission to discharge the important constitutional mandate and to make final findings and recommendations in this matter. There is no room and there is no scope for further inquiries. This is the place with the esteemed members that are placed on this Commission to make these findings, and the evidence and information has been heard and considered by this Commission. A second, perhaps important theme is the cooperation that SARB wishes to record that it has exhibited throughout the Commission process. This cooperation included meetings with the Commission's representatives in Sweden and the provision of various documents and other information going back to 2012. SARB has also submitted a detailed written submission to this Commission on the 13th of May 2015, where it sought to address particular issues that it believed, based on its interactions with the Commission's representatives, would be useful to the Commission in its important work in this matter. On the basis of the evidence that has been heard by this Commission from various representatives, including the statement that has been made by SARB and the other information that has been provided at its behest, our earnest and respectful submission is that there is no evidence of wrongdoing whatsoever on the part of SARB in relation to the SDPP. The Gripen aircraft system that was contributed to the SDPP has exceeded, we understand it to be common cause, the demanding requirements of the South African Air Force, and has also proven to be highly successful internationally. SARB, again, we understand it to be undisputed, has complied fully with its DIP and NIP commitments under the SDPP, as a result of which it has made a lasting and it respectfully submits ongoing contribution to the development and success of South Africa's high technology defence industry. SARB is indeed proud of its achievements and contribution in this regard, and respectfully trusts that the Commission's finding arising from this inquiry will finally dispel the allegations of wrongdoing that have dogged the SDPP, including SARB's involvement in that process for so many years. Chair, Commissioner Musi, as I indicated at the outset, we do not seek to repeat the detail under each of the headings that is contained in our written submissions, but may I make a few observations in relation first to the Gripen aircraft system and then to the commitments that SARB has met in respect of the DIP and NIP process. In the written statement that was submitted by SARB on the 13th of May, SARB explained the design philosophy behind the Gripen aircraft system, its original genesis, its development within Sweden, and then in order to exploit the export potential of that system, its collaboration with British Aerospace, later renamed BAE Systems, to market the aircraft to a global market. As part of that collaboration, British Aerospace contributed its knowledge and experience in adapting the aircraft for export purposes and in marketing and sales of complex defence products to export customers. SARB, for its part, primarily contributed its knowledge of the Swedish aircraft system to the collaboration. In respect of the engagement of the joint venture in relation to the SDPP, The arrangement within the joint venture was that British Aerospace would take the lead in the management of the bid and the contract negotiation phase. Saab's primary role, on the other hand, was to ascertain whether the technical requirements as set out in the documentation were understood, to support the negotiation team with input regarding the time and cost implications of the South African-specific product adaptations, and to address any perceived program risk. British Aerospace also signed the supply agreement, including DIP and NIP, with the South African customer, which covered both the Hawk aircraft, in which Saab had no role, and the Gripen aircraft, which was contracted by British Aerospace under the framework of the JV agreement. We have indicated in detail in our written statement the requirements for the Gripen aircraft system that were demanded by the South African customer, and the extensive process that was engaged upon in the development of the system to meet the specific requirements of the South African Air Force. The final aircraft was contractually delivered in late 2011 after an initial transfer to South Africa in August 2006 and a flight test program that was finalized in early 2008. Chair, not from Saab blowing its own trumpet, but from various highly ranking representatives of the South African National Defence Force and the SAAF, you have heard evidence regarding the rationale for and the utilization and success of the armoury procured pursuant to the SDPP, including the Gripen aircraft system. We have referred in our final written submissions, as has the Department of Defence, to the evidence in particular of General Bain of the SANDF and formerly the Director Combat Systems of the SAAF, which recorded that the Gripen system constitutes an integral part of the capability of the SAAF and South African Defence Force to meet its air defence and other mandates. And in the words of General Bain, it has exceeded the expectations of both the Air Force and the National Defence Force in its domain. Chair, we do not repeat in our submissions the evidence that has been extensively canvassed in the heads of argument submitted on behalf of the Department of Defence. Perhaps we can simply, for the sake of convenience, refer you to paragraphs 106 to 135 of those submissions. It is stressed there that the Gripen aircraft system was the cheapest on offer, that its operational capacity has exceeded expectations, and also it has had good utilization. Even in the evidence of Dr. Woods, he readily conceded that the Gripen was a deserved winner in the Alpha category. So as regards operational specifications, performance and utilization, in our respectful submission, there can be no question as to the reasonableness and as to the rightness of the selection of the Gripen aircraft system for its particular category. Chair, Commissioner Mercy, as regards the DIP and the NIP participation of Saab, those are addressed in paragraphs 15 and onwards of our written submissions. As indicated earlier, there was a division of responsibility between Saab and British Aerospace in relation to these matters. Saab took management responsibility under the framework of the joint venture for the fulfillment of the Gripen elements of the contract, including Gripen-related DIP, while British Aerospace retained management responsibility for the NIP fulfillment in respect of both the Hawk and Gripen elements of the contract. The DIP program relating to the Gripen element of the contract included significant technology transfer, development of Gripen functionality, flight testing, production of Gripen equipment and airframe parts, all of which we have extensively set out in paragraphs 7 and 8 of Saab's written statement. In February 2012, Saab was informed by BAE Systems that Armscor had approved the contractual discharge of the entire DIP obligation relating to the Gripen element of the contract. So not only in respect of the qualifications of the aircraft itself, but also in relation to the DIP program, in our respectful submission, the evidence before this Commission is that SAAB has more than satisfied its contractual commitments. As regards the NIP requirements, those again have been canvassed extensively in these proceedings. SAAB contributed to the best of its ability to the NIP efforts by developing, engaging in and supporting a wide variety of business ventures which are listed in an attachment, I think it was attachment 1, to the written statement that was submitted by SAAB in May. Again, I don't intend to go through all of those, but I do not understand there to be any material dispute regarding that contribution. And again, as in respect of the DIP, SAAB was informed by BAE Systems that the Department of Trade and Industry had approved the contractual discharge of the entire NIP obligation. As regards SAAB's business development in South Africa as a result of its DIP and NIP commitments, those are set out in paragraph 10 of our written statement and summarized in paragraph 19 of SAAB's final submissions. That industrial presence that SAAB now has in South Africa commenced in 1999 with the acquisition of an interest in a South African company. It subsequently purchased shares in another company, which are now known as SAAB Grintech Defence and SAAB Grintech Technologies. They employ 850 employees and have an annual turnover of well over R1 billion. SAAB Grintech Defence has become a leading defence technology company in South Africa. It supplies state-of-the-art products for local and export customers, which have been designed and developed by South African engineers and are manufactured in state-of-the-art production facilities located in Pretoria and Cape Town. Before SAAB's investment in these companies, their export share amounted to some 35% of total revenue, whilst today that has increased to almost 85% of total revenue, making a substantial contribution to the export income of South Africa. The success of SAAB Grintech Defence has been acknowledged in South Africa with the bestowal of the DTI's Best South African Export Company Award for 2 successive years. The success of SAAB South Africa, which is a product of the offset requirements of the SDPP, is a result of a combination of investment, long-term management commitment, and a technology-driven environment within the SAAB Group. Chair, Commissioner Musi, can I finally address the question of unlawful conduct, which is central to the inquiry with which this Commission is engaged? The Commission has now had, over the last 3 or so years, the benefit of an extensive and comprehensive investigation of the relevant facts. It has also received a very considerable body of evidence regarding the procurement process that was followed in awarding the contracts and in the subsequent negotiation of those contracts following the conclusion of the procurement process. SAAB respectfully submits that in the light of all of this documentation and information that has been presented to the Commission and all of the other evidence that the Commission has obtained, there is with respect no basis whatsoever for any finding of unlawful or improper conduct on the part of SAAB. The only conclusion that with respect can be drawn on the basis of the evidence before the Commission is that SAAB acted lawfully at all times in the procurement process and in the negotiation and execution of the Hawk Gripen acquisition contract. The role of advisors to the arms suppliers was also dealt with by the Commission. This has been extensively engaged in other submissions, including the submissions of my learned friend Mr. Cillier just before me. SAAB was requested to address a media question regarding a consultancy agreement concluded between Sanat Pty Limited and Hlongwane Consulting in 2003. As explained in SAAB's written statement, and I refer to paragraph 11.3.2 of that statement, that agreement was not known to SAAB at the time that it was concluded. The circumstances supporting that statement were summarized in a report that followed an investigation of this matter in 2011, and that report, SAAB understands, has been made available to the Commission. The investigation further resulted in the conclusion that SANEP was not the intended counterparty to the consultancy agreement with Hlongwane Consulting, and that the true counterparty was BAE Systems. SAAB also notes that in 2007, the Swedish Prosecutor's Office initiated an investigation in Sweden into alleged improper business practices in connection with Gripen export activities. SAAB again cooperated fully with that investigation and submitted substantial documentation and numerous responses to questions from the Prosecutor's Office. In June 2009, that investigation was closed without any charges being raised against SAAB or any of its employers or directors. SAAB believes this information was independently obtained by the Commission during its visit to Sweden. Chair, Commissioner Musi, we've also noted that in the written submissions that were made to the Commissioner by evidence leaders Sabeco, SC and Cello, there is reference to a proposed charging letter from the United States Department of State to BAE Systems, which referred inter alia to cooperation between BAE and SAAB regarding the marketing and sale of Gripen aircraft. Now, there is no suggestion in the written submissions of the evidence leaders that there was any finding made in relation to SAAB's involvement in that particular process, and for the sake of clarity, SAAB simply wishes to record that no charges by the United States authorities were ever raised against SAAB or any Gripen company formed as a result of the cooperative efforts between SAAB and BAE Systems. And indeed, in footnote 4 to the excerpt that is quoted in the evidence leaders' submissions, the document, the charging letter, expressly notes that SAAB AB and its subsidiaries are not the subject of any investigation related to the transactions described herein. In conclusion, Chair and Commissioner Musi, SAAB respectfully submits that it has cooperated fully with the Commission in its investigation process, and in the light of the information and evidence that this Commission has received, there is no basis for any finding of unlawful or improper conduct by SAAB in relation to its involvement in the SDPP. SAAB respectfully trusts that SAAB's role within the SDPP has been clarified to the satisfaction of the Commission, and respectfully submits that the Commission's findings should conclude that there is no evidence whatsoever of any unlawful or improper conduct on the part of SAAB in relation to the SDPP. Chair, Commissioner Musi, those are the closing submissions of SAAB, but to the extent we are able to, we are happy to respond to any particular questions that the Commission may have.
Thanks a lot for the submissions. I'm sure they'll contribute a great deal to the preparation of the report. Some of the points that we have raised in this document, we had seen them in some other documents, but then they were not quite clear to us. Now I think you have clarified some of those issues.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks a lot, then.
Honourable Chair, Honourable Commissioner, we received a request from Mr. Ndumbi that we read the written submission of BAE into the record, dated 26 July 2012. Those written submissions remain apposite, and by your leave, I'll proceed to read them into the record. BAE Systems plc welcomes the appointment by the President of the Republic of South Africa to the Commission of Inquiry into allegations of fraud, corruption, impropriety or irregularity in the Strategic Defence Procurement Package to investigate issues arising from South Africa's Strategic Defence Procurement Package, the SDPP. BAE very much hopes that the Commission will be able to bring this long-running affair to an appropriate conclusion. As the Commission knows, the history of the SDPP is long and complex. BAE's documentation surrounding both that history and the subsequent investigations into what happened is voluminous and already in the hands of a number of investigatory authorities, including the South African authorities. BAE understands that the Commission has approached the United Kingdom's Serious Fraud Office, the SFO, concerning documents collected from BAE and others in the course of the SFO's investigation of BAE. Over 12 years have passed since the contracts comprising the SDPP were concluded. Over 20 years have passed since BAE's predecessor, British Aerospace, began marketing its civil aircraft in South Africa. There is now no member of senior management within BAE with any direct knowledge of those events. For this reason, BAE is not able to provide a sworn statement, but hopes that instead it may assist the Commission to give a concise overview of the SDPP insofar as it involved BAE and of BAE's activities in relation to the SDPP. BAE is a global defense, aerospace and security company. It delivers a full range of products and services for air, land and naval forces, as well as advanced electronics, security, information technology solutions and support services. In 2011, it was the 5th largest aerospace and defense company in the world. BAE is committed to behaving ethically in all aspects of its business, recognizing that its success depends, amongst other matters, on maintaining and enhancing its corporate reputation. It is well known that BAE was investigated for many years by the UK and United States authorities about allegations of bribery and corruption relating to its global defense business. As explained in Section 7 to follow, these investigations ended in 2010. In 2007, while the investigations were continuing, the board of BAE appointed an independent committee chaired by the Right Honourable the Lord Wolf of Barnes, the former Lord Chief Justice of England and Wales, to report publicly on the company's ethical policies and processes, the Wolf Committee. The Wolf Committee sought to identify the high standards to which a global company is expected to adhere, the extent to which BAE currently met those standards, and to make a series of recommendations about actions that BAE should take to achieve them. Before the Wolf Review commenced, BAE's Board of Directors, the board, committed itself to accepting and implementing the Wolf Committee's recommendations in full. This was an unprecedented step for a major international company. In presenting his committee's report to the board on 6 May 2008, the Wolf Report, the Lord Wolf stated that its 23 recommendations provide a route map for the company to establish a global reputation for ethical business conduct that matches its reputation for outstanding technical competence. The Wolf Report noted the importance of appointing an independent external auditor to provide assurance to the board about the progress of the Wolf implementation program. BAE appointed Deloitte LLP for this purpose. In May 2011, BAE completed the implementation of the Wolf Committee's recommendations. This implementation was assured by Deloitte. In 2010, the Ethical Leadership Group independently reviewed BAE's progress and concluded that it has a solid business conduct program that includes many best practice elements. It identified some opportunities for improvement. These have been incorporated into BAE's continuing business conduct program, consistent with BAE's objective to be in vanguard of ethical best practice. Section 3, an overview of the negotiations. From 1991, BAE...
I'm sorry, sir, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
You know, there are other various paragraphs which we thought are important in your submission, but 3, I don't think is one of them. I think we've had over 12, 13 witnesses dealing with paragraph 3. So we will not mind if you can skip that.
I'm in your hands.
Thank you.
If I may proceed to Section 4, it's a comparison of the aircraft in question. There have been allegations that the Hawk was inferior to and more expensive than other aircraft in the bidding process for South Africa's LIFT program, which included the Airmaki MB-339C, the Aero L-159, the MiG-AT, and the Yak-130. BAE considers that a comparison of the Hawk with its principal rival for the SDPP, the Airmaki, demonstrates that the Hawk is the superior and overall most cost-effective aircraft. The Hawk. The version of the Hawk aircraft purchased by the SAAF represents a new generation of aircraft. It features a new wing, forward and center fuselage, fin and tailplane, and has only 10% commonality with the existing first-generation Hawk aircraft. The SAAF Hawk is equipped with a powerful Rolls-Royce engine and has a high-level technology navigation and weapon delivery systems. the Hawk aircraft has had strong export success throughout the world. It has been consistently selected in competitive tenders and is used in Australia, Bahrain, Canada, Finland, India, Indonesia, and many other countries. It has operated successfully in a wide range of conditions, including the Arctic Circle, the Middle East, and the tropics. The Hawk introduces the student pilot to operational frontline fighter aircraft performance in a training environment, reducing the time needed on expensive to operate frontline aircraft, and is the training aircraft of choice for many countries. With its advanced avionics equipment, reliable airframe, and 3,000 kilogram payload, the Hawk provides advanced flying and weapons training, which addresses the skills of a student pilot needs to master to become a frontline pilot. With proven low maintenance requirements and low life cycle costs, the Hawk provides a cost-effective, realistic training environment for future frontline combat aircrew. The Hawk program in South Africa provides a training system which is ideally suited to young, inexperienced pilots through to more experienced pilots. The new aircraft replaced the SAF's Impala aircraft, which had started to be produced in South Africa in the 1960s. As a result, South Africa's new pilots benefit from far more effective fighter pilot training that facilitates a smoother transition from basic training to more advanced roles. It also means that South African pilots enjoy the benefits of a new jet trainer program comparable to programs being offered by the Royal Air Force, the US Navy, the Royal Australian Air Force, the Canadian-based NATO Flying Training Program, and the Air Forces of Kenya and Zimbabwe. There has been a continuing development program for the Hawk, which has enhanced its capabilities and embodies many product improvements derived from the experience of over 1 million flying hours in service worldwide. The Amaki. The Amaki was the Hawk's principal competitor in the competition to supply the SAAF. It is a modified and updated version of the Amaki MB-326 basic jet trainer, which first flew in 1957. Improvements consist of an uprated engine, new front fuselage for improved view from the rear cockpit, and re-profiled wing leading edge. The design of the airframe and its Rolls-Royce Viper 680 engine, however, remain those of the original MB-326 aircraft. The Amaki is used in Dubai, Eritrea, Ghana, Italy, Malaysia, Nigeria, Peru, Singapore, and the United Arab Emirates. The overall performance of the Amaki falls between that of a turboprop and a proven advanced jet trainer. As a basic jet trainer, the aircraft performs both competently and safely. In comparison to the Hawk, however, the Amaki does not offer a wide range of performance skills training. The initial unit cost of the Amaki is lower than the initial cost of the Hawk, but this figure is misleading when calculating costs of ownership. When the real cost of maintenance and support for the Amaki over its lifetime is added to that of acquisition, the cost of ownership of the Amaki compares unfavorably to the Hawk. The average cost of the Amaki is $1,609 per flying hour, compared to the $1,060 per flying hour for the Hawk. In other words, the Hawk is $549 per hour cheaper. This demonstrates that the Hawk provides better value for money. The Amaki is also inferior to the Hawk in a number of other areas, including the Hawk's abilities to give the student pilot a realistic experience of frontline aircraft, to carry a greater payload and full fuel, which enables a much greater range, and to fly nighttime missions, whereas the Amaki aircraft is limited to short-range daylight missions only. A comparison of the Hawk and the Amaki aircraft. There are a number of comparable features of the Hawk and the Amaki. The Hawk is widely regarded as superior when assessed against those features. The Hawk is widely acknowledged as having broader operational performance than the Amaki. The Hawk can be used for both training and operational purposes, meaning that an air force could deploy Hawks during times of crisis and redeploy for training purposes during peacetime. Further, the Hawk offers forward-looking infrared, which enables it to carry out missions both during the day and at night, and in a range of conditions, unlike the Amaki, which is limited to short-range and daylight ground attack missions. BAE provides a proven operational flight trainer and simulator with the Hawk, which is more advanced and realistic than the fixed-base cockpit simulator provided with the Amaki. with respect to operational capabilities, the Hawk has a higher maximum payload and is the most capable trainer aircraft in delivering heavy ordnance over the furthest distance. Unlike the Emaki, the Hawk does not require a choice between reduced payload and reduced fuel, which limits the capacity of the aircraft in operational missions. The Hawk is also equipped with various defense aids, such as chaff, flare, and an RWR system, which provide a high level of protection for the aircraft when flying. The Hawk has an advantage over the Emaki in relation to life cycle and maintenance requirements. It has a longer aircraft lifespan and a lower average cost per flying hour than the Emaki. The Hawk requires a shorter time on the ground for maintenance during the life cycle of the aircraft, meaning that it is available for more than time during the course of a year for operational missions and training. The Hawk uses a more advanced engine than the Emaki. The Rolls-Royce Arda Mark 951 engine fitted on the Hawk offers better fuel consumption, greater thrust, and has generally had fewer problems reported than the Rolls-Royce Viper turbojet engine fitted on the Emaki. A technical comparison of the two aircraft can be found in Appendix 1 to BAE's written submission.
I'm sorry, again, offsets, I think we have had enough evidence
Okay.
on this, so that we can skip. Same applies to the dip. And the nip. Then get to advisors. I think it appears on page 14 of your submission.
All right. BAE engaged advisors in relation to BAE and Saab. BAE paid approximately £115 million to advisors in connection with the sale of civil and military aircraft, including the Hawk and Gripen, in South Africa and in fulfilling offset obligations. Some campaigners have suggested that the payment of these commissions is evidence in itself that there was corruption in the procurement process. The Institute for Accountability has suggested to the Commission that an admission of bribery was made in the UK's House of Commons in 2003. In fact, the statement made by the then Secretary of State for Trade and Industry, Patricia Hewitt MP, on 9 June 2003 in relation to BAE's sale of Hawk aircraft to South Africa was, ECGD's application process requires certain details of agent's commission to be disclosed to ECGD in order that it can follow its due diligence procedures. In this case, such due diligence procedures were followed and no irregularities were detected. For reasons of commercial confidentiality, specific details of the commission paid cannot be revealed. The Institute of Accountability's letter to the then evidence leader of the Commission, dated 14 November 2011, submitted that the word commissions meant bribes. These assertions do not accurately characterize the statement made by the Secretary of State. They also reflect a misunderstanding of the nature of the procurement process. The use of advisors by international companies exporting to countries where they have no material in-country capability or staff was and is commonplace across many industries. This approach offers a lower cost base for long lead time programs compared to the basing of staff in-country, ultimately leading to a lower cost of sales to the customer. It is widely accepted that offset obligations require contractors to employ advisors to perform roles which include providing local knowledge of market-specific procurement processes and practices. In the 1990s, BAE's sales strategy worldwide was to incur no cost in country itself, but rather to engage local advisors upon whom the costs fell. Further, the advisors assumed all the financial risk of the procurement process, saving BAE a fixed overhead which, in the case of South Africa, BAE estimates, based on the costs of other overseas offices, to have been in the order of approximately £4.2 million annually. BAE's work in South Africa began in 1991 and has run for more than 20 years. The SDPP contracts were worth in excess of £2 billion and incorporated very significant offset obligations. The actual spend on advisors in relation to BAE and Saab was well within what any company bidding for contracts of this sort would have expected to incur. This is not to say that BAE would adopt exactly the same approach for a similar procurement process today. BAE undertook a comprehensive review of its relationships with advisors in 2007, as a result of which BAE terminated its contractual relationships with its advisors globally, including those acting in relation to the SDPP. In its report, the Wolf Committee considered the BAE's revised process for the appointment, selection, and management of advisors was leading-edge practice. The conduct of advisors relating to BAE and SAB products in the course of the SDPP has been the subject matter has been subject to a number of detailed investigations over many years. None of these investigations has demonstrated unlawful conduct on their part. As is well known, in July 2004, the Serious Fraud Office began investigating allegations against the BAE Group. That investigation included an investigation of the sale of the Hawk and Gripen aircraft to South Africa. In the course of the 5 years of that investigation, BAE disclosed hundreds of thousands of documents to and made relevant employees available for interview by the SFO at a cost to BAE of tens of millions of pounds. BAE believes that the Serious Fraud Office obtained documents from others in the UK, South Africa, and elsewhere, and interviewed many individuals. In 2007, the US Department of Justice also began an investigation of BAE's business. In February 2010, BAE agreed with the SFO and the Department of Justice the basis upon which the investigation should be concluded. In the UK, BAE agreed to plead guilty to one charge of failing to ensure that the books and records of one of its subsidiaries were reasonably accurate in relation to a transaction in Tanzania, and to make a payment for the benefit of the people in Tanzania. In the US, BAE agreed to plead guilty to making false statements to the US government and certain export control violations. None of these charges against BAE related to its activities in South Africa. BAE did not plead guilty to any offences of bribery or corruption. BAE understands that the South African authorities have also investigated allegations concerning the sale of Hawk and Gripen aircraft to South Africa. In 2001, the Joint Investigation Team reported that it had found no evidence of improper or unlawful conduct by the government. It appears that the matter has also been investigated by the Scorpions, but BAE has not been informed that the investigation made any adverse findings. In conclusion, in the 1990s, BAE, in partnership with SAB, responded to the South African government's request for replacement of the SAAF's Impala aircraft. In so doing, BAE offered and sold to South Africa Hawk aircraft, which has been successfully exported to countries throughout the world. BAE and its predecessor companies are proud of their partnership with South Africa over the past 2 decades. They have met their obligations both in the delivery of the aircraft themselves and in relation to offset, each to the evident satisfaction of the South African authorities. BAE hopes that the Commission finds this overview useful and is able to bring the investigation to a satisfactory conclusion. This written submission was made 3 years ago by BAE. BAE's instructions are to me that they remain apposite and they stand by them. And there's nothing that has unfolded over the course of the Commission or otherwise that necessitates any amendment or addition to them.
Thanks a lot, sir. You are correct. These submissions were made to the Commission by BAE, I think in 2012. Then because there were certain issues which arose in the meantime, we thought it would only make sense that the submissions should be read into the record. Thanks a lot for reading that into the record.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairperson.
I think this brings to the end of the participation of the equipment suppliers. I'm not sure if any of the evidence leaders wants to make any comment about the submissions of other people up to now. It doesn't seem that any of the evidence leaders wants to make any further submissions. Thank you. I think now we have come to the end of the phase 2 of this Commission's proceedings. And the next phase that we're going to go to is to prepare a report. Commissioner Moose and I agreed that we're going to prepare a closing remarks statement, which we have done, and it has been typed, and I've signed it, and we'll try and make it available to everybody after reading it into the record. Paragraph 1 there reads as follows. Today's sitting of the Commission is significant for a number of reasons. It marks the end of the penultimate phase of the Commission's work, the public hearings which commenced on 19th August 2013. Most importantly, it concludes the Commission's inquiry into the Strategic Defense Procurement Package, which, as you may recall, was announced by the President in September 2011 and began in earnest on the 16th of April 2012 when we moved to temporary offices in Savokop. In the coming few days, Commissioner Moose and I will begin the solitary and arduous task of writing our final report. We have until the 31st of December 2015 to finalize it and submit it to the President. We will, however, endeavor to submit it much sooner than stipulated in the terms of reference. This being the last sitting of the Commission, it may be apposite to reflect briefly on its journey thus far. We do so with circumspection, mindful of the injunction that we must report to the President and only to him. This inquiry launched as a consequence of incessant allegations of venality relating to the SDPPs. These accusations, which cast doubt on the wisdom of the first democratically elected government of South Africa, impinge the integrity of members of the executive, government officials, defense companies that won the bids, their employees and agents or consultants have been in the public domain for quite some time. They have also been chronicled in several books and numerous press articles. We deemed it appropriate from the onset to solicit information from all interested parties, and in May 2012, the Commission invited everyone with information relevant to its terms of reference to bring such information to its attention by way of affidavit. The responses were disappointingly scant. We received a meager 8 submissions. Simultaneously, we requisitioned information pertaining to the STPP in the custody of Cabinet, Parliament, the Department of Defense, Department of Trade and Industry, the National Treasury, Armaments Corporation of South Africa, the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation, which inherited the investigations into arms acquisition from the Directorate of Special Operations when it was disbanded, as well as the investigating Directorate, Serious Economic Offenses, the National Prosecuting Authority, and the Office of the Auditor General. Their response was heartening. These institutions not only provided us with information, but also affirmed that they will cooperate with the Commission in discharging its mandate. The commitment of these institutions and their unwavering support was also demonstrated by the swift manner in which they declassified documents required by the Commission, including Cabinet minutes, their affordability study report, and the contracts concluded between the Government of the Republic and various arms manufacturers. As is apparent from the above, the Commission is not the first institution to grapple with the allegations of malfeasance in connection with the SDPPs. The Directorate for Special Operations and subsequently the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigations commenced its investigations into the various legs of the arms procurement in 2000. These investigations were discontinued in 2010. The allegations also spurred investigations in the United Kingdom, Sweden, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Germany, and France. Some witnesses who appeared before the Commission testified that BAE's system, which supplied the leading fighter trainers, the Hawks, and advanced light fighter aircraft, the Gripens, was investigated by the United States Department. It would have been remiss of the Commission not to make an effort to access information and or evidence amassed by these investigative bodies. Accordingly, the Commission consulted with the prosecutors, auditors, and investigators who were involved in the local investigation into the acquisitions between 2001 and 2010, and visited a number of overseas countries and met and consulted with the representatives of the foreign investigative agencies referred to above. The outcome of our interactions with all these entities and people will form the subject of the Commission's final report and cannot be discussed here. We should concede that the road thus far has not been plain sailing. In the period prior to the commencement of the public hearings, we endured a barrage of criticism which sparked the resignations of two officials, which was sparked by the resignation of two officials, one of whom made serious allegations against the Commission. Sections of the media seized upon these allegations and tried to discredit the Commission and delegitimize its work. The Commission dealt comprehensively with allegations in a number of media statements. Then, on the eve of the start of the public hearings, one of the commissioners resigned, which resulted not only in another round of media lashing of the Commission, but also in the commencement of the public hearings being postponed by 2 weeks and the Commission being reconstituted. When we thought that we had weathered the storm, one senior evidence leader resigned, to be followed shortly by other two evidence leaders right in the middle of the public hearings. However, this only served to strengthen the resolve of the remaining teams of evidence leaders, our internal legal team, our support staff, and of course the commissioners to soldier on and execute our mandate. The Commission has had approximately 56 witnesses and had extensive evidence, including evidence of a technical nature by the senior officials of the military, officials of AMSCO, and senior experienced officials of government departments that took part in the procurement process. Among the high-profile people who testified are members of the Inter-Ministerial Committee that oversaw the whole process, and we can mention former President Thabo Mbeki, former Minister of Finance, Mr. Manuel, former Minister of Trade and Industry, Mr. Alec Owen, former Minister of Defense, Mr. Lusuwa Lokota, and former Deputy Minister of Defense, Mr. Ronnie Castros. Among the senior military officers who testified are the current Chief of the National Defense Force, General Soli Shoke, and the former Chief of the Air Force, General Hector, as well as Deputy Chief of the Air Force, General Malinga. On the other spectrum, the Commission has had evidence of prominent individuals who are popularly referred to as critics by virtue of the fact that they have publicly criticized the SDPPs over the years. This includes Mr. Terry Crawford Brown, Dr. Richard Young, and career politician Ms. Patricia DeLille and Mr. David Mania, as well as former MPs Ms. Renée Taljaard and Dr. Gavin Woods. Mr. Feinstein, Van Vieren, and Holden, who have written books on the subject, were scheduled to appear before the Commission but refused to testify. We, however, do have the submissions that they handed in 2012, and this will be looked at. The last witness to testify were representatives of the three of the companies that were awarded the contracts, the winning bidders, namely Tales of France, ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems, part of the German Frigate Consortium, and Augusta Helicopters of Italy. We take this opportunity to thank all the legal representatives who represented the various witnesses during the hearings, and also those who participated in the closing submissions. Their participation was critical in facilitating the smooth running of the hearings. Last but not least, we thank all the witnesses who testified. We know that appearing in a forum of this nature is not an easy task, especially considering that they will be subjected to possible cross-examination. It is apposite to take this opportunity to thank our staff members for their unwavering commitment and loyalty to the cause of the Commission. I emphasize cause, and staying the course in the face of all the tribulations. To them, I say, job well done. In this regard, I wish to make special mention of the following. 1, evidence leaders, Advocate Tisibeko SC, Advocate Labala SC, Advocate Mpaka SC, Senior Attorney Ms. M. Ramakaha, Advocate Ngobese, Advocate Sello, and Advocate Zondi. 2, Advocate Evan Dumbe, head of the internal legal team. He has been a pillar of strength and operated as a conduit, firstly, between the evidence leaders and the Commission, and secondly, between the Commission and witnesses and interested parties. Thirdly, Secretary to the Commission, Ms. P. Lopondo, and her staff, who have throughout ably provided the Commission with the necessary administrative support, including Ms. Tlatrayo, our office manager. Fourthly, the communications manager, Mr. W. Baloy, who has had to deal with inquiries and queries from the media and kept the public abreast of the Commission's programs and activities. 5, Mr. Nklewisi Mama, who has provided the Commission with assistance in the form of research as well as ensuring that the documents used at the public hearings are made available to all stakeholders. 6, personal assistance to the Commissioners, Ms. M. Kumalo and Mrs. C. Sipeng, who have throughout provided the necessary assistance to the Commissioners. 7, Captain Kutsie and his staff for providing us with security at the public hearings. 8, Mr. Twala and his team of security personnel for looking after the Commission's offices. Our sincere gratitude also goes to the City of Tshwane for providing us with office space in this venue where we have held our meetings since 2013. We would also like to thank the Department of International Relations and the Department of Justice and Correctional Services for their assistance. Lastly, we would like to thank the media for ensuring that the proceedings of the Commission reached all members of the South African society. I think that is our concluding statement. And lastly, I would like to thank all of you who are even present today, and some of you, like the brigadier at the back there, who has been here, I think, on every single day that we have been sitting. Thanks a lot. Without your support, we would not have reached the point that we have reached today. I thank you all, and will now adjourn. Thank you.